I call this meeting of the Northeast Independent School District to order. Let the record show that a quorum of board members is present, that this meeting has been duly called, and that notice of this meeting has been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. Although members of the board are not gathered in a central physical location, we do have a quorum in attendance at this meeting by video conference. So I'm now going to call each board member's name, and I would ask that you say here. Tony Hasso.
Here.
Sandy Huey.
Here.
Sandy Winkley.
Here.
Terry Williams.
Here.
David Byer.
Here.
Omar Leos.
Here.
Okay, thank you all for being here. We are meeting by use of Zoom software application, which allows two-way communication for members of the public. Due to bandwidth requirements, we have the video portion of Zoom unavailable. As we would at any in-person meeting, members of the public who have followed the instructions on the meeting notice for registering to speak will be unmuted for 3 minutes. For those signed up to speak to the agenda item, please make sure you have followed the instructions on the agenda to join the meeting. As a reminder, since this is a special called meeting, you may only speak to agenda items and you will be called at that time. If you would like to provide comment at a future meeting conducted by video conference or telephone call, please follow the instructions on the meeting notice. All other meeting procedures will adhere to board adopted procedures to the extent practicable. An audio recording of this meeting is being made and will be available to the public at a later date. Now, the board will adjourn into executive session pursuant to the following sections of the Texas Open Meetings Act. Texas Government Code Section 551.071, private consultation with the board's attorney. 551.072, discussing purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property. 551.074, to discuss personnel or to hear complaints against personnel, and the time is 11:33. The board will now reconvene into open session, and the time is 11:41. Item 4, matters from executive session. A, personnel, including but not limited to administrative appointments pursuant to Government Code Section 551.074. 1, possible action regarding routine personnel, including but not limited to administrative appointments, no action. B, possible action regarding purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property pursuant to Government Code Section 551.072, no action. C, possible action regarding consultation with board's attorney pursuant to Government Code Section 551.071, 1, pending and or possible litigation, no action. Item 5, new business for possible board action. A, business services. 1, possible action regarding order to postpone election. Mr. Villarreal, we had some people sign up to speak to this agenda item. We're going to let them speak to it at this time. I need to read the matters from the floor section. The trustees welcome comments from members of the public during this time. As a reminder, board members do not respond to public comments during the meeting, although members may request further information or a future agenda item on a matter raised during public comment. As fully explained in the board's written procedures for this time, the matters from the floor portion is a limited public forum. Accordingly, speakers may present on a topic related for 3 minutes. 1, you cannot talk about personal complaints about an individual staff or board member that should be raised using the district's grievance policies. 2, a personnel action. 3, a student disciplinary matter. 4, a complaint about a particular student. 5, or pending litigation. Any person who persists in speaking on these topics after being directed not to do so will lose the remainder of their time to speak and may lose their privilege of addressing the board at future meetings. We also welcome written comments at any time, either through email at board@neisd.net or by mail, care of the superintendent's office at 8961 Tesoro Drive, 6th floor, San Antonio, Texas 78217. Ms. Huey, will you call the people who have signed up, please?
First is Robert Hilliard.
Hello, can y'all hear me?
Yes, please be sure to state your address for the record.
Hello, President Groen, other trustees. My name is Robert Stephen Hilliard. I'm a District 6 resident, live at 909 Great Tree Drive. And I am one of the candidates on the ballot for the May 2nd election and want to speak about 5A1, the possible action regarding the order to postpone the election. I want to express a hope for transparency during these times of uncertainty. As you know, TASB strongly advised all Texas school districts with May elections to have voted to delay them no later than March 27th. We're now 11 days past that. Challenger candidates are in a holding pattern. We don't have the advantage of information incumbents may have had. I would ask each of you to consider sharing the information you had that other candidates would want or maybe need to know. I'm also thinking about all the poll workers. They are the unsung heroes of our democratic republic. Your transparency could bring them peace and understanding as to why we've been without a decision this late in the game. Same goes for every voter. This has been a difficult and chaotic time for all involved. No one wants to worry about whether they have to choose between their health and safety or exercising their right to vote. In these times of uncertainty, the overt transparency by government bodies is vital. It can be a source of confidence and trust versus placing people in the shadows wondering what's going on. My final request is to please vote to cancel the May election with the early voting less than 2 weeks away. The resolution was not posted online, so I cannot speak to anything else that might be on it. Hopefully there's nothing else surprising when the full agenda package is posted. Thank you very much for your time and have a blessed day.
Next is Simran Hilliard.
Gilson.
Sorry, Simran Gilson, looking at the wrong sheet. Sorry.
Okay, can you all hear me now? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, my name is Simran Gilson. I live at 2635 Spring Canyon, and I'm running for NEISD Board of Trustees District 5. I was told at the candidate orientation that this board prides itself on being a leader among the area school districts, yet it appears to be the last ISD to decide on postponing its May election to November. With early voting for the May 2nd election set to begin on April 20, less than 2 weeks from now, various stakeholders in the district have been asking themselves why NEISD has delayed so long to consider postponing the election. I'd like to know specifically, why did this board wait so long given the following facts? On March 18th, almost 3 weeks ago, Governor Abbott asked political subdivisions to postpone their elections to November 3rd so that all resources could be focused on fighting COVID-19. On March 24, NEISD extended the closure of schools where most of the polling sites are located through April 24, covering part of the early voting period. On March 31, Governor Abbott closed schools through May 4, going beyond the May 2nd election date. On April 2, the state's director of elections emailed local election officials with a stern warning to postpone elections or risk legal challenge and subjecting voters to health risks. Postponing the election to November, like most other subdivisions did weeks or days ago, would satisfy the Texas Election Code's joint election requirement. 5 members of this board are facing a contested election, and I, for one, have wondered why the unnecessary delay. I was told by the government relations director for the district that the board was waiting to see what other entities were planning to do. Given how quickly NEISD acted on other issues in response to COVID and its prided position as a leader among Texas ISDs, I couldn't help but think that perhaps this delay was politically motivated. After all, NEISD could have acted on its own to postpone weeks ago, leading the way, instead of lagging near the end of the pack and waiting to see how other subdivisions acted. While the board has been privy to the goings-on between the district and other entities, the public and the 6 challengers seeking a place on this board have been left in the dark. I'm hoping your explanation can shed some light on what I see as having been an unnecessary delay. Should you vote to postpone the election, it means this board will work on a new budget this summer, including items like free and reduced school lunch programs. A district resident told me there are currently no curbside lunch offerings at schools north of 1604. I would ask the board and superintendent to see to providing curbside at some of these schools for their benefit. Thank you.
Next is Michael Osborne.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry. I'm on my phone and don't know whether it's working. Howdy. My
We
name
can
is
hear you.
Osborne. Go ahead.
We can
I'm sorry.
hear
Say
you.
that. Thank you. Howdy. My name is Michael Osborne and I live in District 1 at 13622 Stony Hill. And I'm running for trustee in District 1. For the life of me, I don't know why it doesn't include, that's in the the Churchill cluster. I don't know why it doesn't include Eisenhower Middle School or Harmony Hills, which is a failing school, according to the Texas, according to the TEA. Those schools are in the Lee cluster. This coronavirus has affected everyone across NEISD, the city, state, and country. Some have acted, others have not. Some have acted definitively, others have chosen to play politics. I urge you to act now without further delay and vote to reschedule the May 2nd election. Section 110581 of the Election Code allows the election to be moved to November the 3rd and satisfy the requirement for a joint election. I do not understand why you want to coordinate with the city on their tax proposal for charter school elections when they have expanded their charter schools into private schools. It seems to be counter to your whole Go Public marketing campaign. Some folks use laws as an excuse to keep from acting. Others look for what is allowed by the same laws and act responsibly for the good of the public. They are the leaders. That is the difference between politicians and leaders. The residents of District 1 want leaders. Please step up and be leaders today. Vote to move the election. And also, please post the record of this meeting for public access in accordance with the Secretary of State's advisory and the governor's directive as opposed to just upon request. Thank you for your time. God bless you and stay safe out there.
The next one is Adana Schumann. Adonis, let me remind you that this is a special meeting and the only topics that can be discussed are about the election. So if your comments were anything but the election, they would have to wait until our regular meeting next week.
Ms. Grona and board members, hopefully I am on right now.
Yes.
Okay, my name is Adana Sherman and my address is 9033 Arrow. I'm
sorry to interrupt you, Adonis, but are you on the sign-in sheet? You signed up to talk about greetings and thank you. That didn't sound like it was for the election.
It was towards the election, yes.
Okay. I'm sorry to interrupt you. So go ahead.
That's okay. I just kind of ran out of space to write.
Okay. No worries.
Okay. First of all, I want to thank you for the leadership role that y'all have shown during this crisis. You've done a great job. And that was my thank you. And I also wanted to encourage you to consider moving the election to November due to the time constraints with everything that's happening within not only our local school district, but Bexar County and what's going on with the elections right now. As you know, there have already been delays from Castle Hills they have decided, and I know that we participate with them in part of the school board election, they have also postponed. So my recommendation as the president of the Northeast Education Association is I'd like for you to consider, please, to move the election to November. And that was what I was going to say. Thank y'all very much for listening.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so that was all of everyone who had signed up to speak. So Mr. Villarreal, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Yes, Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Mike, executive staff, and guests. I call on Deb Caldwell to talk about this item. Thank you.
Madam President, board members, Dr. Micah, executive staff, and guests, can you hear me okay?
Yes, thank you.
Today, we bring you an order to postpone the May 2nd, 2020 election to November 3rd, 2020. On March 18th, the governor granted the authority to political subdivisions like Northeast to postpone the May election in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. As you may imagine, there was misinformation and misunderstanding immediately after the governor's announcement, since political subdivisions and elections officials had not experienced this situation before. I have been in continuous contact with the Bexar County Elections Administrator, as well as other entities on the May ballot, to better understand the authority provided to us through the governor's action. The Secretary of State's office sent out several mass emails containing guidance as recent as April the 2nd, but additional guidance was sent on March 18th, March 19th, March 24th, April 1, and April the 2nd. Additionally, the Texas Education Agency provided guidance near the end of March that a decision on board elections should be made prior to early voting, April 20th. Since this has been a very fluid situation with information developing day to day, staff waited to bring you this recommendation to postpone until today. We feel confident that we now have the necessary information from the Secretary of State's office to proceed. The order to postpone provided in your packet follows the Secretary of State's Election Advisory number 2020-12. Through this order to postpone, the Northeast ISD Board of Trustees will exercise the authority given to it through the governor's action and move the May 2nd, 2020 board election to November 3rd, 2020 in the interest of further helping preserve public health and safety in light of the COVID-19 pandemic. Candidates who filed to run for a trustee position for the May 2nd election will remain candidates for the November 3rd election. The ballot order draw we already conducted will also remain the same. We will still utilize the Bexar County Elections Department to conduct a joint election in November. At a future meeting, we will bring you a revised order of election with information on early voting and polling locations after the information is provided to us by the Bexar County Elections Department. On behalf of Dr. Micah and Dan Villarreal, I would like to recommend that the order to postpone the May 2nd, 2020 election to November 3rd, 2020 be approved. I'm happy to take your questions.
Okay, do any board members have any questions for Deb?
This is Sandy Huey. I have a question.
Okay.
Ms. Caldwell, when is the city of San Antonio going to delay their election for pre-K? I understood it was on their agenda, and then was it delayed? Or I was trying to follow the news media on it, but didn't really understand what had happened there. So at this point, they still have not postponed their election, correct?
That is correct. So the board that oversees the Pre-K for SA program did meet on in early April to make the recommendation to the city, but the item to postpone is actually on the April 9th city agenda. So if you go to the City of San Antonio's website and click on City Council agendas, you'll see it posted for the 9th. It is also my understanding that today, the 7th, the Alamo Community College District was going to take action on their May election as well. They have trustees as well.
Thank you. That was my next question was the Alamo colleges, because I know we would be sharing polling sites with the city and with, well, now Castle Hills, as I understand it, was able to cancel their election because their opposed race, they did not have to postpone. They were able to cancel because the opponents withdrew to save the city the money and the problems with a postponed election. Is that correct?
That is correct. Last week, the city of Castle Hills met and was able to cancel that election. As you mentioned, they only had one contested race for their alderman positions, and one of the candidates withdrew, and his statement was read at the meeting, and then they took action to cancel.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Carrie.
Thank you. One of the questions I had, and first of all, I'd like to thank you, Ms. Caldwell, for the due diligence in making sure that, we were actually following the most recent information and correct procedure. My question is, we could not have just changed the date without taking official board action, correct?
The order to postpone is the necessary action that you must take to move the May 2nd election to November 3rd. There is no other authorized date other than November 3rd. As recent as this past Thursday, April 2nd, the Secretary of State's office has stated multiple times that the governor's action only authorized a move to November the 3rd. There's no authority for a local political subdivision on its own order to move an election to any other date.
Okay, but I guess my question was really, so when the order came out, I guess for transparency purposes, we did need and want to wait until we were able to call this special meeting so that everyone knew that, we were following the guidelines and taking this action to move it to the authorized date of November 3rd.
I'll give you an example, Mrs. Williams. When the initial notification came out from the governor's action in March, several entities, including municipalities and others who were on the May ballot, immediately started talking about the July, the primary election as an opportunity to have their ballot items. And then when the governor announced the primary election rescheduled date in July, there were a lot of entities who were looking at that as a possibility. But it was, again, a lot of misunderstanding and misinformation in the beginning. It has been confirmed from the Secretary of State's office that November 3rd is the only date. And part of why staff did not bring this to you immediately after the governor's action was because there was a lot of misinformation, such as the primary election option, floating around. And we wanted to be crystal clear that we knew what was within your authority as a Board of Trustees to do before we brought you a recommendation.
Okay. I think that pretty much answers my question. Thank you.
Okay, good. Tony, did you have a question?
I did. Thank you. Question again for Ms. Caldwell. So will this essentially reset everything? For example, once we get 30 days out from that election, will that trigger additional filing requirements and things of that nature for the candidates?
Mr. Hasso, it does reset some of the situations. As I mentioned in my layout of the agenda item, it does not reset the candidate application process. So any candidates who file to run according to the May 2nd deadlines, that all stays the same. They will remain the candidates for November 3rd. and the ballot order that we already did remains the same. But yes, there will be new deadlines for candidates, including a 30-day report deadline based off of the November election schedule and the 8-day report, et cetera. There will also be, of course, there's also other dates like voter registration, early voting, things like that. I will be emailing candidates. If the board takes action today to postpone the election, I will email candidates of new deadlines that will apply.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, David.
Yeah, thank you. I had a couple of questions. Mainly, actually, Tony just asked one of them about all the campaign finance reports and all that for filing those again. Sounds like we'll need to do that. My biggest question, I think, has to do with the budget itself. What will this do? Are we able to carry the finances we had set aside to hold this election? Do those get carried over to next year, or will we have to make a new budget? Or basically, when we go through the budget process later this year, will that have to be a new item?
Go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, this is Dan. Yes, sir. What we do is we'll close out the year as of June 30th, and we just budget it again for next year. It's done in the budget process. They're the accounts that already have been built up.
Okay. And so the money that we do not spend on the election this year,
it just goes down. Yes, sir. It goes into down to the bottom line, and it's something that's not spent. So it goes into our fund balance.
Okay. And Ms. Caldwell, can you go ahead and reiterate for me I wrote down we had until basically April 20th to make this decision, or prior to early voting, if I'm not mistaken. And although we might be a couple of weeks behind some other entities, if you could just reiterate for me what that timeline was as far as when the governor made his action. I believe it was on March 18th, or sent out the action for delaying or the ability for us to postpone an election, kind of through the decision we're making today. If you could just give me those key dates again. I'm sorry, I did not jot them all down.
Yes, Mr. Byer. As you mentioned, the governor's action was done on March 18th. That action, that proclamation, did not provide, nor the subsequent SOS guidance that followed that action, did not provide a deadline, so to speak, for when your action had to be taken. But then toward the end of March, the Texas Education Agency provided guidance that a decision on board elections should be made prior to early voting. That information is posted on the Texas Education Agency's COVID-19 resources webpage. So you can see it there in writing. They have a question and answer document for board members, and that is posted there in that Q&A document. So the Texas Education Agency suggested that the decision should be made prior to early voting, which is April the 20th. But the governor's proclamation did not provide a deadline.
Yeah. Okay. Well, and I think in light of recent comments by the governor and others about, obviously, the schools are going to be closed through May 4th at this point, and we would, well, I would say we're not selfish enough to think that we need to hold an election for ourselves, or at least in my opinion. Even if the schools are closed, I think that would be a disservice to a lot of people, including our staff and time and money and effort for any candidates that are looking to run for the school board. So the only other question I had in the I think the document that is going to be voted on later had to do with I think it was the mail-in or the mail ballots. Can you explain that a little bit, that there were some ballots that would still remain any that were mailed in, I guess. I'm trying to find what I did with the document.
Yes.
Sorry, there was
Yes,
there's a piece on there about the mail-in ballots, some that will have to be mailed in again and others that would remain as they are.
Right. So if a person, met the qualifications for the application for ballot by mail, if they had already submitted that, those applications, those persons who qualify for applications for ballot by mail, which are called ABBMs, those will continue to be valid for November the 3rd. If they were expecting to be absent for May 2nd, then so that would be for a situation where voters who are over the age 65 or have a disability. If somebody had applied for ballots by mail specifically because they were going to be absent, like out of country for the May 2nd election, not for another condition like a disability, then they would need to resubmit an ABBM for the November 3rd election. So let me just summarize that again to make sure that it's clear. That if you qualified for applications for ballots by mail, ABBMs, because you are over the age of 65 or due to a disability, those will be carried over. If you submitted an ABBM based on your anticipation of being absent from Bexar County for May 2nd, you would have to reapply to show that you would be absent for the November 3rd election.
Perfect. Thank you. I just wanted to make sure that was clear to everybody, because that was in some of the information that we'll be voting on shortly. So thank you. That's all the questions I have.
Okay, Ms. Winkley.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Deb, so much. This is a question for Ms. Caldwell. You answered a lot of my questions that Terry, Tony, and David asked, but I did want to go back to the different dates that the Secretary of State released information all the way from 3/18 to 4/2. And you noted that they released information on the 1st of April and then the 2nd of April, which was just last week. And so I'm asking what the difference was in those 2 days as far as information received from the state.
Yes, ma'am. The information was provided through the Secretary of State's office, which, as you know, is the authority that oversees elections, and the Secretary of State's appointed by the governor. So that is the conduit for which we receive the mass emails and the guidance on elections. On April the 1st, the elections department sent the Secretary of State's Elections Department, not Bexar County, sent an email basically addressing common questions that they have received continuously since the order, which is to include the ability to move to any other date, other things related to like special elections that don't apply to Northeast, and other situations. Basically a Q&A update for the different procedures that they had received questions on. On the 2nd, they actually provided advisory 2020-14, which is voting and election procedures related to COVID-19. That advisory included things that needed to be considered in preparing for elections if the COVID-19 threat is in place. Things like social distancing, the need to clean machines, those kinds of procedures, should this be an election held during a public health issue.
Okay, thank you. And then the second that I have is just regarding the terms for the 5 seats that are up. And so they'll come in November, and then it's just a 6-month shorter term than the normal 48-month. Is that correct?
So the guidance from the Secretary of State office says that current members would carry over until the November 3rd election results, until you canvass the votes for the November 3rd election. Then we would go through the process of qualifying the candidates like we normally would, and then correct the next election, with the exception of single member District 3, which is an unexpired term. The next election for you guys would be 4 years, May of 2024. With the exception of single member District 3. As a reminder, that is a unexpired term. And so that seat, normally it would be back up in May of 2022.
Okay, thank you so much for the clarification.
Terry?
Yes, I'm sorry. I just had one question for clarification. This does not allow for any new candidates to file. All of that has taken place, so it doesn't open up the door for any new candidates, correct?
That is correct. The Secretary of State's office has provided guidance that all candidates who previously filed will remain candidates. It does not reopen the candidate application process.
Thank you.
Okay, does anybody else have any other questions or comments?
Madam President, if I may, I just want to thank Deb Caldwell for her work. As many of you have alluded to, it's been a rather interesting time to navigate, with a lot of competing information coming in and hard and very difficult sometimes to sort through. Deb's done a great job of sifting through all the information out there, keeping us very up to date. And I appreciate your patience as we work through those sites. And I just want to thank Deb for the work that she's done in this time.
And I will echo that. I let him go first, so he stole my thunder. But anyway, okay. So if there are no further questions, I'm going to check and double check. Do I have a motion to approve the attached order to postpone May 2nd, 2020 election to November 3rd, 2020?
Madam President, this is Terry Williams. I'd like to move to approve moving the election to November 3rd, 2020.
Okay, thank you, Terry. Do I have a second?
Madam President, this is Sandy Winkley. I second.
Okay, thank you. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. All right. Thank you again, Deb, for everything that you've done on this. I know it's been a lot of work. So seeing no other business, it is item 6, adjournment, and the time is 12:16. Thank you all for being here by Zoom.